After the beginning of the trade war, Taiwan's semiconductor industry should be the hardest hit because we know that it has a lot of contract factories. People are generally concerned about things like mobile phone manufacturers, right? Hanhai, Foxconn. In fact, we all know that mobile phones are mainly chips. And the largest contract manufacturer of chips in the world is TSMC. TSMC currently accounts for more than 50% of the market share. In second place is Samsung, even less than 15%. Who is TSMC's biggest customer? It's Apple, isn't it? So, the second biggest customer is Huawei. In other words, TSMC is responsible for Apple's chip production. Well, Huawei's high-end computers are designed and developed by Huawei Hayes. Even, some chips are jointly developed with TSMC. We can see that since last year. The issue of chip export involving TSMC has attracted everyone's attention. For example, 25% of American technology. Some people are looking for gaps in this American technology, aren't they? Looking for a breakthrough. But really, you can't find much. Because it even includes the hardware and the machine for you. In this way, TSMC has fewer and fewer choices. We saw that last year. TSMC made a very difficult statement. As far as possible, they continue to maintain exports to Huawei in accordance with US law. Under legal circumstances, right? So, 2 days ago, TSMC has just announced that it will open a chip manufacturing plant in the United States. We all thought we could breathe a sigh of relief. But it's not. Because the United States does not get much support in Europe. Basically, all the cards that can be played before have been played. Some European countries still give Huawei an equal opportunity to compete in the market. This is awkward, isn't it? Britain and Germany are all in trouble. The United States even said, if you use Huawei's next-generation communication base station, it's a 5 grams base station. The United States will stop sharing military intelligence with former NATO partners. The US government believes that there is the possibility of leaking secrets. But this statement, whether it is the United States officials in Germany or the Secretary of State of the United States, the President of the United States, it didn't solve the problem. The British Prime Minister, who has just come out of the intensive care unit, also agreed to give Huawei an equal opportunity to compete. At this moment, we see 2 days ago, the US government issued some more restrictions, which should be counted. Well, the United States has given TSMC a certain exemption period. However, permission from the United States is required to continue to supply Huawei. So, we see two pieces of news at the same time. A piece of news was reported in China. Huawei urgently added an order of US $700 million to TSMC. The other one was reported by the Japanese. TSMC has stopped accepting new orders from Huawei. This means that by September, the completion of existing orders will be within the exemption period. The Americans granted a 120-day exemption. Starting from May 15, TSMC has completed the scheduled order. TSMC will no longer produce chips for Huawei. Huawei now has two alternatives. One is Samsung. As one can imagine. So South Korea is not only a competitor to Huawei, is it? Samsung is its competitor. At the same time, South Korea is also an ally of the United States. Samsung will definitely not take its order. In that case, SMIC is the only one that can receive the order. Whether it is Samsung or TSMC, they are all supported by 5 nanometers and 7 nanometers. The future must be 5 nanometers or even smaller. What SMIC can use at present are 14 nanometers, 12 nanometers. These are in the stage of market guidance. That means if TSMC confirms that it will no longer provide chips to Huawei, Huawei's high-end mobile phones will no longer exist. Because of its craftsmanship, it went back to 5 years ago. Is there any future to speak of? Right? What we see today is actually a leading idea of the United States. It is no longer just talking about patents stolen by Huawei. Or Huawei infringes on intellectual property rights. Now, the United States has directly raised it to the possibility of providing services to the Chinese military. With this in mind, we can't talk about it. What we see today is that all of these are quite significant cases in the international contract manufacturing industry. After Huawei was strangled, Europe will not have more choices. As for Africa and ASEAN, in fact, they don't need high-end chips. Huawei's middle and low-end mobile phones, medium and low-end communication products, intermediate products, including future 5G base stations. For them, the most practical is the low-end mobile phone. The best-selling product in China League should be a product of the level of 2,000 yuan. Because of the higher-end demand, it must be an American brand. Even if you reduce the price, no one will choose these Huawei products that lack Android and the chips are not maintained. The only option for a person who can afford a high-end phone is Apple. And in Africa, if you give him an iPhone, he won't necessarily accept it. Because according to their consumption habits and consumption level, low-end chips are enough. The product of the terminal is only hesitant. Therefore, Huawei's high-end products actually have a small market in African countries. Huawei's main market is still competing with Apple and Samsung for the European market. In the United States, we know that more and more Chinese products are no longer popular. So what people see today is mainly a description of uprooting in Europe. The restrictions imposed by the US Department of Commerce are aimed at the protracted European Union. All European countries use future 5G base stations as bargaining chips to challenge Americans. Now, through TSMC, through the processing of the chip, it will be directly uprooted for you. We should take a closer look at this question. What is the ultimate market for Huawei to produce these products using high-end chips? In fact, it is not just aimed at an enterprise, but against this very vague political attitude in Europe. Europe has always wanted to choose more politically, in line with the United States. Financially, try to get help from China as much as possible. Because in Europe, there are many countries that are phasing out 2.5 of their industrial equipment. Their economic and trade exchanges with China cannot be cut off if they want to, because it's hard for them to get into an alternative market. Because of the market in China, they are reluctant to lose it. Therefore, the United States is now putting pressure on them to help them make up their minds. What we see today involves these bans of Huawei and TSMC. In fact, this is the root of these effects. All right, thank you. Goodbye.